All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So in this one, I am really excited. It's the first mock draft of the offseason, and I'm joined by my buddy Alex from Hail Mary Sports. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Dude, doing well. Always excited for mock draft content. Can never do it enough.
I got to be honest, man. Like, your channel is my favorite mock draft channel because I love the transparency. I love how you kind of give your own takes, but you also have like really strong opinions to back them up.
Yeah.
It's not just, copy paste, typical black and white stuff that, I mean, there's just mock drafts everywhere. Like, you type in mock draft on Google and you could probably find like 50 new ones a day. I feel like yours stand out. And, of course, for everyone listening, Alex's link is going to be listed down below in the description box. But I know you work today. I know we are in different time zones. I appreciate you hopping on. So with that being said, you can take the first pick.
I appreciate it. So I think I ended up discussing this on a show earlier today. And, for me, I end up talking about quarterback fit as something that matters arguably more than talent. And I do have concerns about Cam Ward, bottom line, just having that, like, with the way that Will Levis ended up, not having success. And Will Levis, very similar attributes, solid mobility, questionable processor, really good arm talent. And I mean, again, questionable processor, that's up for debate for Cam Ward. I still look at that Cal VT game, didn't really love it, right? And so I did in my own mock draft a trade with the Giants to swap them, but I'm not going to go Shedeur Sanders #1 overall. Now, I think that's going to fit Brian Callahan better, but if they're going to stick and pick, I'm going to trust that their new GM coming from the Kansas City Chiefs is going to value the playmaking ability, is going to value that mobility. And so I'm going to go with Cam Ward at #1 overall.
Cam Ward, dude, bro, it's crazy, man, because I'm with you. I feel like, actually, where is Cam Ward?
He's at 17. Yeah. 17. I used this site too much to where I was about to say, like, go to 17, but.
This is the first time. I knew we were talking pre-stream, but first time kind of using the PFF mock draft machine. But, dude, I'm with you, man. I think when it comes to Brian Callahan, like, his offensive system,
right?
I know it's not like the most popular thing, but I feel like Shedeur is a better fit for it. I also feel like Sanders is maybe more ready to play than Cam, or maybe more so ready to have success at the NFL level, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I totally hear you, man. I really like Shedeur as a prospect. I do.
Yeah, no, he's fun. He's a good prospect, and I love the fact that, actually, I think Callahan during the Shrine Bowl ended up saying that he is closer archetype-wise to Joe Burrow. I just can't see him going #1. Like, there are teams, and there will always be teams that don't have first-round grades on players who go high. Like, that's just the nature of things. Everybody has their own opinion. I technically don't have a first-round grade on either quarterback. That's a hot take, but I think in the right system, they end up performing. Like, I think outside the system, none of them should be a first-round pick. But in the right system, I think that's perfectly reasonable for those top two. And so that's why it's like, I think Shedeur is a better fit, just like you do in Tennessee, but there's just no way if you're taking a quarterback #1, you're going to take the floor option and you're going to take the chance on Callahan evolving his coaching to be able to maximize the talent to make it worth it.
Let me ask you kind of a curveball out of the box question. I feel like this isn't really talked about a whole lot, but I'm curious to get your take because I love how you put together your personalized big board. Mm-hmm. If you were to lump Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward into last year's quarterback class, not necessarily, he's ranked 7 and he's ranked 8, but you out of the consensus, Drake May, Jane Daniels, Caleb, Penix, Bo Nix, McCarthy, is Shedeur and Ward, in your eyes, in your opinion, ranked miles below him, or complete, like, just there's a wide distance there? Do you maybe have one in front of like a McCarthy or a Penix?
So I'm actually pulling it up right now for you just so I can be fully transparent. And to be fair, so something that I pride myself on is the fact that I kind of do self-reflection every single year. So I've modified this slightly. So the scores are not 1-to-1, but they essentially scored, if you're looking at like where they actually ended up ranking, QB7 and QB8. Like they scored that way. I know you said not to say like QB7, QB8, but I'm like literally saying like numbers to numbers, it would be in that realm. And so, I mean, to me, they're guys who are late first, early second kind of dudes. Currently on my board, they're in that like 35 to 45 range, and that's fine. That's perfectly reasonable, and it's okay for quarterbacks to be in that range. And if you put them in the right system, like it's something I'm also developing, you boost them up a significant shit ton. So they would be ending up being mid to late first for me.
Awesome, man. Love the breakdown and insight. So for spot number 2 here, Cleveland, I'm going to assume that Garrett gets traded.
Yeah.
Even if Garrett sticks around, though, I just feel like Abdul Carter makes a ton of sense for Cleveland. I mean, top tier edge rushers, they just don't hit the free agent market.
Yeah.
They, if you're going to trade for one, as Cleveland could potentially find out, it's going to take a freaking ton to go out and get those guys. And Abdul Carter, in my opinion, has a just humongous ceiling.
Yeah.
I mean, if you trade Garrett, this to me is like a no-brainer.
Yeah, dude. I mean, so I'm curious about this. Do you think he's a post-June 1 trade, or is it something where they're going to trade him during the draft? Because if it's during the draft, one of these picks should go to Cleveland. I think we'll both agree to that. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was saying like post-June 1, technically the cap hit is significantly lower, but you also then run the risk of trading Myles Garrett to a team that Myles Garrett will affect which pick you're going to get. So, I mean, I'm just curious, like what you would think.
So I think for me, if I'm just taking a guess, I'm gonna say he gets dealt beforehand because he's a really good player.
Yeah,
number 1 overall pick. I mean, he's never really been a headache or a problem. I feel like he would have. Yeah, I feel like if it wasn't for this trade request, he would stick with the Browns. So because of that, they're going to do right by him and get him to a new team. They're going to figure out, the cap ramifications, the team need ramifications before, free agency in the draft. Well, maybe not free agency, but definitely before the draft, in my opinion.
Right.
Do right by Garrett, acquire this extra capital. And, if you're Kevin Stefanski, someone who, there's some rumblings, is he going to be here for the long term? Mm-hmm. If this season doesn't go well, do you want to trade literally your best player for 2026 draft capital? I don't know if Stefanski's going to be on board for that. So
that's a really good point, by the way. That's a really good point.
I think he's going to get dealt probably. And I don't want to say it's a shoo-in, it's a guarantee, but I think there's a lot of teams that need just a top tier edge rusher in Garrett. I think the Lions make sense. The Bills, the Packers are probably the top 3 for me.
Okay. So would you want to then, like, let's just say send them to the Lions when we get there?
Yeah, we can do that. I'm not sure how the machine is gonna do it, but
we can talk about it when it comes up. I was just saying, like, just so we could, if we are gonna say it's gonna happen, then it would change the draft.
Definitely. Cool, man.
But number 3 for the Giants, we're talking about self-preservation moves with Stefanski going after 2025 picks over 2026. I think that at the same time, you could talk about it for the Giants. Very short leashes for both Joe Schoen as well as Brian Daboll. I think they're going to be cornered into taking a quarterback here. And that's why I wish they could swap with the Titans, because I think Ward is a better fit for Daboll and Sanders better fit for Callahan. But in this situation, by the way, he's at like 44 or something like that. So it's a little bit of a grind on the mouse to be able to get there. But there he is, 42. Yeah, I think quarterback's the way they rock, just because self-preservation move. You got to get something going and, saying that, hey, this is my quarterback, might be able to get you an extra year or 2.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think, the Giants do. They just cannot continue to roll out miss after miss after miss, or just ineffective options.
Right.
I really like Sanders. I'm not a big Giants fan. I just don't. I think Cam Ward is actually the better Daboll fit, and I think Sanders is better for Callahan. But I don't know if
that's literally what I did. It does not match trade value at all for pick value. But I just sent a 3rd round pick to give the Titans their 3rd back. I sent their 3rd back that they spent for Snead. And then I just swapped the quarterbacks. So I'm like, this is just better for everyone all around, even though it doesn't make much sense. I was like, hell yeah. So I was happy with that, but these quarterbacks are going to go where they're going to go. So it's a little bit annoying, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, the guys who are making the picks are the ones who are on the hot seat, and not a great spot to be in, but it is what it is.
Totally. I mean, if you are if you are Tennessee, Borgonzi stepping in, you could essentially scare the Giants and say, hey, we're taking calls with the Raiders. They could jump to 2 and jump you for a quarterback because the Sanders, we're with them. But moving on, New England, man, I just don't like this pick for them. Just being 100% honest, I feel like offensive line should be the move right? The franchise cornerstone is Drake May. We have to make sure his life is, as easy as possible moving forward. But I just don't love an offensive lineman at 4. I think it's just too rich. And then I'm thinking, wide receiver maybe, but at the same time, they have so much cap room. Could they bring in, a top tier, like a T. Higgins or something? Mm-hmm. But I feel like Travis Hunter is probably just the safe bet here. Helps at corner, helps at receiver. I mean, I think he could be a security blanket for Drake May, just such an explosive playmaker. And I do think Vrabel is going to look at Hunter and say, you know what, this guy loves football. His conditioning is just off the charts. Mm-hmm. We have to be complete idiots to not understand how to utilize, someone like Travis Hunter. So
right.
This team really needs talent, and he's, I would say, the most talented player in the draft.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I love it. Again, you ended up emphasizing the point I would make at the end there. Vrabel's head coach. I mean, Elliott Wolf, no disrespect to him, I don't think he does that great of a job. You look at the draft since 2020, since he's been brought in, not great. Just take the control out of his hands for a second and just go after the player that's going to make sense. And it just makes sense that Vrabel would want a defensive guy that he can end up utilizing. And I'm sure Josh McDaniels is going to love having some specified plays to have Travis over on the offense as well. But continuing on, pick number 5 here for the Jaguars, I'm going to have a similar light when talking about the vision for this pick. There's a lot of spots you can go here. You can go Will Johnson because they need a boundary corner, like a boundary corner number 1. Will Johnson's awesome. You can go Mason Graham because going after a high-level defensive interior, we saw what happened last time, like in the second round when the Rams moved up for Braden Fisk. That is a game changer. But when you look at Liam Cohen and the weapons at his disposal and also the vision he'll have for the team, I think he wants to get his Drake London / Mike Evans. Teteroa McMillon, there's nobody remotely close to that in the class. And it's not saying that Teteroa talent-wise is completely different, but for the role that he would want to play, this is a clear vision, and it pairs up perfectly with Brian Thomas. And then you also have Christian Kirk in the slot. It's kind of a dream team right there. So I'd be going after Teteroa McMillon, having 2 elite wide receivers on your team for 4 years on cheaper contracts, and call it a day.
Totally, man. It makes sense. And Jacksonville's an interesting team because of course they lost a bunch of games, but
right.
They, like, in my opinion, they have the important positions figured out: quarterback, right, tackle, wide receiver 1, I would say, in Thomas. They got the edge rushers on the outside.
Right.
I think Jacksonville can go in a bunch of different directions, but this is actually interesting, man, because I was hoping that Tet was going to fall to 6 with the Raiders. Right, we miss out on QBs, unfortunately, but with Pete Carroll, man. I've seen a couple mock drafts with Jeanty going this high, but I think with Chip Kelly coming in, Judkins could be in play later on in the draft.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to go Jeanty. You got Christian Wilkins there on the D line. You got Crosby there. I mean, I could see Mason Graham. That to me, it's such a safe pick. But I think Pete Carroll is going to want to get a really, really polished player, someone that he knows that he can rely on outside on the boundary. I mean, you're going up against Herbert and Mahomes, Bo Nix, great offensive coaches, Harbaugh, Reed, Sean Payton. I think Will Johnson. I think Will Johnson for me is going to be the pick here at spot number 6.
Yeah, I mean, it's step for step with what I've done so far outside of flopping the QBs. And another thing for Will Johnson, people are talking about like, oh, he might not have the top speed, right? You know who didn't have the top speed? Richard Sherman. Just saying. I mean, he's physical. He's big. Doesn't have the top speed. I mean, I still think Will Johnson, he got pick 6s. The dude, he's not like a crap athlete. So I do think that, Will Johnson, especially Jacorian Bennett's lack of health, could easily be something that is a massive win for a franchise. If he did not have the injury this year, I truly think he would have rebounded and been arguably above Travis Hunter in terms of selection. I think he is really that special. But this pick's easy for me, by the way. And obviously, I want to discuss it with you because this is kind of big for Jets Central. But I think Mason Graham's the easy shoe in here. What else would you be thinking about at this pick, though?
With this current board layout, yeah, I'm going Mason Graham 100% of the way. I like a lot of players in this class.
Yeah.
You can argue Tyler Warren. You can argue, maybe trying to find a right tackle. I think it's a little too rich for spot number 7.
Right.
Malachi Starks is my favorite player in the draft. I'm not saying he's the best player in the draft, just like from a fan's perspective.
Yeah, comparatively.
Yeah. So I just love watching him play. I love his game. Just I feel like center field. It's my favorite position. So, you can argue Starks, but I feel like that would only make sense with like a trade back. But then who would come up to spot number 7? It's a weird spot to trade up to. But
Yeah.
Mason Graham, easy. For me, honestly, if Graham goes to Jacksonville or not Oakland, Vegas, Will Johnson would be the pick for me. Either one of those two Michigan guys, I'm 100% cool with.
See, I forgot what ended up happening, but somehow like all of those guys were essentially taken by the Jets pick. And so the one who I was actually debating there, and even though he's coming off a hip injury, like pre-hip injury, he was like a top 3, top 5 guy in the class, is Ben Morrison. Obviously, you'd want to trade back to get him. I love him though. Dude,
me too, man. I love Benjamin Morrison, man. I feel like he's really, really good in man cover. We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll get to him.
Okay, so spot number 8 here. I think, man, Carolina, it's tough because I feel like I'm really between two things. Number one, like an explosive defensive player that can affect the quarterback.
Right.
Or do I try to make Bryce Young's life easier by giving him a security blanket, someone who could hurt defenses over the field? I haven't really seen this being mocked so much to Carolina, but
how about Tyler Warren?
Tyler Warren, yeah. Bryce Young, just, it looked like the game was starting to slow down for him at the end of the season. Who knows what's going to happen with free agency. I feel like you can maybe plug holes as needed on defense, but you're not going to find Tyler Warren in free agency. You're not going to find Tyler Warren as far as like a trade candidate. And then I also think Tremble's a free agent as well. Even if Tremble was back there, Tyler Warren, in my opinion, is a big upgrade. So a little out of the box, but I think this to me makes sense because I want to make sure that Bryce Young feels good and you're supplying him an actual weapon on the offensive side.
I hate that for one reason. That was my dream pick at the next spot. But they also have 3 tight ends right now: Tremble, Thomas, and of all things, Felipe Franks up for contract this year. So they literally have one guy in Sanders. But yeah, that was my dream pick. So a little bit irritated at the moment because I was all excited to be able to have my whole Kellen Moore spiel, which you've robbed me of. But no, I mean, I love Tyler Warren to death. It does make a ton of sense. I've always said the best ways to help out your quarterback are like pretty much 3 ways, like the easiest, fastest ways. Good O-line, that's the easiest thing. Then having a good running back, because then you kind of take the stress off him. But on top of that, tight end. I mean, reliable contested catch threat. Obviously, it's great to have a bunch of receivers, but unless you scheme them all open, the one guy who is nice to have is someone who will be open even if covered, and Tyler Warren is fantastic at that. So that's a long-winded way of me trying to stall my number 9 overall pick here. Heart shattered. It's okay. But I think Kellen Moore most likely going to be the head coach. Can't say it for certain because, tampering and all that shit. But I think we're pretty confident that that's going to be the route that they go. And I will say there's 2 guys I'm debating here. I'm curious what your thoughts are. I'm looking at James Pearce Jr. and Josh Simmons. So for 2 entirely different reasons. Josh Simmons to play right tackle. He played right tackle 2 years ago, and the right tackle spot is not great. And then James Pearce, because he's my number technically 2, but technically 3, depending on how you phrase it, player in the class. So it's tough, but I'm curious where your head's at if you have some other guys you're also considering.
I really like the Pearce pick. I feel like in a lot of mocks, like we see James Pearce like down at the bottom of the first round, but I really like him, man. Just so explosive off the edge. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Leonard Floyd at this stage of his career. Just kind of that longer, lankier edge rusher. But
I wonder if I'm going to push my agenda here because I have something that I want to do in a little bit. And I don't think. Would you take James Pearce at 10?
I won't. No.
I'm going to push my agenda and say an offensive coach is going to come in and one offensive guy. I'm going to go Josh Simmons, who's the best tackle in the class before he ended up getting hurt. Yeah, I mean, he also has experience at right tackle. Granted, it wasn't a great year at San Diego State, but he's someone who, like, I personally see Ohio State being extremely flexible in terms of their roles. I think that he's fantastic. And building up the offensive line, if you really want Kelvin Banks or Will Campbell to play that role, feel free to fill it in. I'm sure that another team that is looking at the other 2 would be happy with whatever guy was there.
Yeah, I mean, I think what something that kind of backs your pick here is that, Kellen Moore is coming in from Philly, and Philly's known for having that dominant O-line and just being able to give Hurt so much time to throw. So, but, alternatively, like, I feel like New Orleans has been like begging for a number one edge rusher for like, I feel like every draft it's like the end.
They've been taking them. They just haven't been hitting on them. I'm like, damn, dude.
Like, crazy. All right, dude. So for spot number 10, I mean, we're sitting here talking about the O-line. To me, it's between Jeanty and Will Campbell. Because you can argue the whole like Jahmyr Gibbs thing being taken high, Ben Johnson now coming in, takes pressure off of Caleb Williams. But I feel like maybe the safer, like I don't think Gibbs would be as successful with Detroit if it wasn't for that offensive line. I think you could probably just select Will Campbell, throw him in at guard, and just get instant improvement in both pass pro and run blocking. So a little boring here, but I think it's I think it's maybe the safer play in my opinion.
I will say the last time DeAndre Swift lost his job, the offensive coordinator was Ben Johnson. So it's another reason in case you wanted to potentially throw the curveball in there with Jeanty, which is what I've been doing recently. But you can never go wrong with Will Campbell in case you also, if he does end up proving to be tackle versatile, like legitimately a tackle in the NFL, you could end up pretty much moving on from Braxton Jones at that point as well. So you have a long-term plan there. Number 11 for San Francisco. I'm going to push my agenda because this is what I wanted to do. Robert Saleh is the DC. He ended up bringing on Will McDonald. James Pearce is going to be his Will McDonald here, and he's going to be even better version of him. I mean, you have pretty much your Jermaine Johnson in Nick Bosa, but like obviously 1,000 times better. And then now you have your better version of Will McDonald as well. That team is starving for a defensive lineman, and I'm happy to deliver.
I really like that. I haven't really thought about it too much because when I'm thinking about James Pearce, like I don't know, there's a couple teams that stand out. Carolina being one of them, New Orleans being one of them. I haven't really thought about San Fran, man. That's
I ended up thinking about it on the fly yesterday. I'm like, it's like I didn't think about the Will McDonald connection, but yeah, Robert Saleh kind of like that signing really made me feel like, okay, they have that vision for him. It's a first round pick before as well for someone who is at 236, not 243, 236. And Will McDonald was a mid first round pick, and people thought of him as a late first round. Talk about now James Pearce. Some people think is a late first, but a lot of people now think of him as an earlier to mid first. I think the value lines up.
Yeah, man, I like that. And what's interesting too is the Jets drafted McDonald, and they didn't even need an edge rush, an edge rusher at the time. They ended up needing him, but I mean, they had Bryce Huff, they had Jermaine Johnson, JFM, could kick outside if need be, and they still went with them.
Yeah,
dude, I don't like this pick here for Dallas.
It's so bad. You still got Jeanty at least, but outside of that, man, it is bad, dude. That is like I literally say the Panthers pick and the Cowboys pick are my two least favorites in the entire draft.
Really? Okay, so for me, it's probably Dallas and New England. New England's going to walk away with a great player, but I just can't. Like, you can argue so many players there.
Right. You'll never be happy.
That O-line. Yeah, I just want that O-lineman for May, but let's see. Yeah, Dallas. Yeah, Jeanty here, kind of cliche, but if he falls to 12, I could see it being the pick.
They call it old but gold, my friend. That's unfortunately that's the way it is. And also running backs of that caliber in recent memory, you talk about Gibbs and Bijan Robinson, they do go in that range. It is logical, and I think the Cowboys could really use the help too. But 13, Miami. Malachi is the easy choice here because you're losing Poyer as well as Holland. But I will say, like, if you want to throw a curveball, I would also point out that they did draft Wilkins in the first round. Walter Nolan might be somebody that they're looking at that explosiveness, the pass rushing, and the gap penetration to where it might end up working out. When you look at their pick in the second round, are you going to be able to get a player like that? I think yes. I would say Omar Norman-Lott is like right up there, and he'll be there in the second round. But you also could potentially get Xavier Watts in round 2. So I'm curious what you think at that spot. Those are the two guys I think are most realistic because I don't think Greer would end up drafting a guard in round 1.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting because I didn't think that they would go Chop Robinson a year ago, and he was kind of that like considered raw edge rusher. And he actually proved me wrong. I didn't think Chop was going to have that big of an impact, just admittedly, being 100% honest. So you can kind of argue that, Miami, I don't like they clearly value the raw physical tools from defensive linemen or, from pass rushers here. Nolan, I feel like, has just such an extremely high ceiling. If we think back when he was coming out of high school, man, he was just top tier, goes to A&M and then transfers over. Yeah, and it transfers over to Ole Miss. But I just, I feel like there's already talent there. In my opinion, I feel like there's talent there on the Dolphins D-line, where I look at safety, I'm like, yeah, it's devoid of talent without Holland and Poyer. And even with Poyer, I mean, Poyer had to step back. He's older anyway. So I think if it was me, I would go Starks, but maybe I'm biased. No.
Go Starks.
It's back to back, man. So if you want Nolan, man, that's totally cool.
You know what? I will go old but gold. I had you go old but gold. I'll go old but gold. Let's go Starks.
Cool. Fair enough. Indy, man, 14. Well, I should have made you go Nolan because Starks I feel like would have been a good fit here.
I was like, at this point, you almost convinced me. I was like, let's see what he does at 14. Let's be a dick. Let's just see how he handles it. That was the easy pick too. I was like, all right, let's see how this goes. I have a guy who I love for this pick. I'm curious if you'll come to the same conclusion.
So I'm gonna say Benjamin Morrison. That's my go-to with it.
Hell yeah.
I love what they did last season with Latu. Yeah. Ideally, Tyler Warren would probably be my number one go-to off the board. My second would be Starks. I mean, safety's tough because with free agency this year, there's so many good ones. So with Justin Reed and Merrick, there's along with Holland and whatnot. So I feel like the Colts are gonna sign at least one with Lou taking over as DC. I don't think they're just gonna leave it as is and just say we're gonna solely focus on 14. But who knows how it's gonna play out. I think I'm gonna go Benjamin Morrison for me. I think he would have been a top 12 player, top 10, top 12 player if he didn't get hurt.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, he was, I think, number 5 overall on my board before he got hurt. And it's just I'm surprised he came out. True Jr., coming off a season-ending injury. I'm like, really? We're in the NIL era, man. Go transfer, make yourself some dough, and then end up coming out as a first-rounder. Next year's class ain't that good for corners. So I was like, hey. So, hey, maybe you got some good notes. I think that maybe one of the deciding factors was Al Golden going to the Bengals. And so he felt comfortable with him not slipping past 17.
Dude, good call, man. That's a really good call because they could use them.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, maybe that's the reason why. Otherwise, I can't justify it because literally until the day and on the day, I freaking released a mock draft with him returning. I literally was saying, there's no way Ben Morrison comes out. And then it's like, well, he's coming out. I'm like, so, anywho, we're with the Falcons now, right? Woo. Yeah. They got some fun picks here, dude. Mike Green's intriguing. Jalon Walker as well. This is my dream trade back spot in trade mock drafts because the Falcons literally have 4 picks: 15, 46, 116, 244. So it's I'm always a jerk to my Falcons fans or for my Cardinals fans, excuse me, when I'm like, let's see who we take for the Cardinals. Let's have a team jump up in front of them and take them. But if the Falcons sticking and picking, I'm going to go after the player that provides the most value early on. And I know that Raheem Morris likes edge rushers that can stand up as well. So I'm going to go after a player who fills a short-term need while also being able to have a long-term vision of him, even being able to have legitimate edge reps. And I'm actually looking at Jalon Walker here.
Jalon Walker, really? Okay.
Yeah, I think that. So Jalen's a top 20 player on my board for a linebacker, but he would be a top 30 player as an edge rusher as well. So he's extremely raw at both. I think the Falcons could use the short-term boost in terms of a captain at the linebacking spot. And then you add the fact that he can be a stand-up 2-point edge rusher. And there are also guys in round 2, 3, and beyond where if you're looking at someone to solely be a pure edge rusher, you can get extremely good value. There's not many linebackers in this class that remotely touch Jalon Walker. And if you don't take him, there's a strong chance he's going in your division to Tampa Bay. And I'd prefer not to give Bowles the chance to use Jalon Walker.
Dude, now that I'm thinking about it, man, Panthers, Saints, Falcons, Bucks all need edge rushers bad. It's
all of
funny.
them also could use Jalen Walker too. So it's like, there's a chance that all of them could end up trying to go after him. So it's like, who will be able to take him? Now I'm curious what you do with this pick. My Cardinals fans are very particular.
Where do they kind of stand with it? I know what I'm going to go with, but
they're suckers for Mike Green.
You would go with Mike Green?
I mean, would I in like my dream world go Mike Green? No. I think this edge rushing class is phenomenal, and I think your value on day 2, like given the fact that Mike Green, even though he showed a lot of really good speed to power, I still didn't see the actual technique in Mobile. Like he's notorious for sitting Josh Connerly on his butt, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't like some crazy like ghost or, like rip pull through. And it's like, there wasn't anything of like the extremely high technical factor. He showed what we knew he had and then added to it with the extra power, which is like great get off and, surprising tackles with how quickly he can close range. I think that's a great trait to have, by the way. But for the Cardinals, I mean, I like building the defensive interior potentially, but also, I mean, looking at the guys who are available, because we've depleted it a bit. I mean,
let me if you want me to scroll.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm scrolling on mine.
Okay.
So don't worry about that. I'm just thinking like where I would go personally with it, because it is tough. I think in round 2, you absolutely could be fine going defensive interior or edge without trading back. Shoot, I'm so accustomed to doing mock drafts where I can't even think about what I would solely do. Like that's like it's gotten to that point because I hybrid my mind. But I mean, I'd honestly take the upside with Mykel Williams. Like I just
okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
He feels like a Jonathan Gannon type of player.
He does. I mean, also Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Bulldogs, for Christ's sake. But,
I didn't even think of that.
It's just like, it does make sense. But I was thinking like, maybe having the guy who can be in a 2-point stance, like similar to BJ Ojolari, like could be like Mike Green fits technically better. But I would say good coaching should adapt to the talent you have, not the talent adapting to the coaching you have. Depends on how good the coach is, though.
See, like what I was thinking for Arizona was Mike Green, Kelvin Banks, or Booker, because this team is so like run orient. Like they're just maulers in the running game, and I feel like Banks can kick inside a guard and just be that mauler, just humongous dude, just humiliating guys.
Yeah. I don't know if Monty would draft a guard round 1 though. That's the problem.
You made a pretty compelling point for points for Mykel Williams though.
If you want to piss off
Cardinals, I'll go Williams over Green.
Ooh, you're gonna piss off the fans. Okay, good man.
But it does make sense. It makes sense though when you look at how what Jonathan, like I feel like again he feels like a Jonathan Gannon type of player.
Yeah, I mean that's perfectly fair. I mean obviously like I personally love the potential with Mykel. So full transparency, I was a Mykel hater, denier at the beginning of the year, and for a good portion of the year as well. So I come from a stance where a lot of people are right now, where it's like, I didn't see the production, like he's being overvalued for like what he actually put out on the field. And I agree with that if you look at the whole season. But when you look at it through context, the dude started off the year, Jesus, my hair is going nuts, so man, holy Toledo. But, but like he started off the year with a high ankle sprain, right? It's like week 2, for Christ's sakes, high ankle sprain. That is, especially for an athletic player, a massive hit to your capabilities. So, of course, he's not going to produce the same way. But what you end up looking for after understanding that is how did he do as he got healthier, right? And as he got healthier, as the season progressed, he got better, which to me showed that it wasn't necessarily a talent issue. It was more so a health issue, because being an edge rusher is a lot about timing. And he had a lot more moves than what he did the year before in terms of success. So as a denier, I would say have a little bit more faith. Go watch the end of the year, because that's when he was his healthiest and the most close to what he'll be in the NFL. So there you go. Voila.
Nah, man, love it. One thing I also love too about like specifically when you're talking about defensive players that have flashed or like show just lots of potential is when they come from programs with great defensive coaches. And also, facilities as well, but more so the coaches, right? Because they're receiving really, really good technique. It's like all hands on deck, the top of the top, best of the best coaching to develop that player. Now, you can also push back and say, like, maybe they maybe they're closer to their ceiling than where they would if they were coming in from maybe a smaller school or not so great coaching, right? It's like more untapped potential. But I do think it's relevant to talk about, right? With a guy in Kirby Smart, like just he's been coached really, really well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have that pedigree. You add on top of it the fact that, again, you get better as you get healthier, which usually doesn't mean that you don't have the talent. It means you just didn't have the health. So I do really like how that ended up working out. Now for the Bengals, not an easy choice as much as it seems like an easy choice. I normally have Will Campbell who slides here, fun fact. So I'm stuck between two players because their guard core worse than the NFL. Like if you look PFF wise, I think both of them are in the 50s in terms of like rank in the NFL, which is, again, not good. And you got to protect your most valuable asset. So the two guys I'm considering here is Nick Scorton, who usually slips in my mock drafts, but I don't trust the Bengals to develop edge rusher. So I want to go after the one that's the most ready day one. And 285 fits their physical profile. And then you have someone who is extremely polished. And again, when fully healthy, you got to see him fully unleash his skill set. He was a top 5 pick coming into the year out of Purdue. So just like it's been there, it is there. But the other guy is right above him in Gray Zabel, who I adore. I had him 27 before the Senior Bowl. So now I think he's like 12th overall on my board. Like, dude's insane. I love him to death. So what do you think about it?
So let me ask you a quick question. Why don't you think, since he can develop develop DNs with Golden coming in?
Yeah. So I guess that's a good point with Al Golden, to be fair. But I also look at Notre Dame's track record of their edge rushers, and they haven't produced proper quality edge rushers for the NFL. You look at RJ Oben, like right now, RJ is probably their best bet because you look at Foskey, and you look at the rest of the edge rushers like Javonte Jean-Baptiste, he's like pretty much a non-factor. So it's like it doesn't give me a lot of faith, right? And I want to limit my liability if I'm going to, or limit the risk if I'm going to go after an edge rusher. So it's like the best success Cincinnati has had historically, acquiring Trey Hendrickson, who is already essentially breaking out. For me, Nick Scorton has the highest floor of the guys available. So you're getting an instant upgrade. Maybe you're not going to get the hit it out of the ballpark kind of guy, but you're getting yourself a damn good player nonetheless. But I'm curious what you think about that.
For me at least, when I'm looking, and this is, any team in football, not just Cincinnati, whenever you have like a new coordinator coming in, I feel like it's really important to make sure you add pieces, whether it's through the draft or free agency, on your side of the football, guys that you want and that fit your system, because I don't want to hire you again, OCDC, and say, here's what we have to work with and you make it work. I want you to have the leash to say, you know what, this is a player who I really, really like. This is someone who I think fits with us and I want him. And then, of course, the head coach to kind of green light that. And then it's the head coach's responsibility to maybe, figure out the other need or needs. Of course, it's a lot more detailed than that black and white kind of description. But if it comes down to two players, one on defense, one on offense, and you have Al Golden stepping into, he's been in the college level for a long time, stepping in. This is a big job for him. Cincinnati playoff, their expectations are through the roof.
Yeah.
I would like to think that Cincinnati can maybe address guard through free agency or even in round 2 or something. There's a lot of really talented offensive linemen still on the board.
Absolutely.
So I think if I was Cincy right here, and it's between those two guys, I think I would go with Scorton. I think you made a really good point about him having the highest floor and therefore maybe being one of the most impactful pieces that they could land here at 17.
Again, he ended up taking the job knowing that the talent or the group of guys he's taking on are going to be like Miles Murphy, right? And then Hendrickson. These are bigger dudes. So he did accept the job offer as well, understanding that the prototype of edge rusher he's going to deal with is the bigger size. Now, if he wants to go for someone a little bit on the smaller size, I'm thinking Oben might be 250. Then he could be dark horse pick, could be Mike Green. He could use him as his RJ Oben if he wants to, but I do think that I don't think he's going to try to mold. I don't think Notre Dame technically had the pleasure of choosing every single player that they wanted on the defensive line. So I also don't think that's a perfect reflection of Golden's style. And, they did a good job with Open, and that got him to the Super Bowl, the championship. I'm going to go with Scorton.
Scorton, cool, man.
Yeah.
Let me find him real quick.
Oh, you good. I think he's 27 or 26.
27.
Cool. I'm too addicted to this. I'm like realizing I have a problem. I know the numbers without even looking at it.
Seattle here at 18. For me, Kelvin Banks, just like, I think he'd be a huge upgrade over Laken Tomlinson, who lots of Jets fans have seen. Just not all that impressive. I believe he was only on a 1-year deal anyway. Again, maybe a little bit of a boring pick here, but Mahler in the running game, I feel like, I think to me at least, he makes sense for Seattle. Just boom, plug and play, day one starter, instant upgrade. Don't have to worry about it. And you move forward. You're solidifying this offensive line.
Yeah. I mean, boosting the offensive line is never a bad idea, ever. Now, I'm curious, are you worried at all about his foot speed? Because that's something that I noted. I'm like, I don't like how he moves out in space.
I still think he's a first-round pick. I understand that this class is like a quote-unquote weaker offensive line, specifically weaker tackle class. I'm not really too concerned about it because he's going to be playing inside. I think if the idea is we got to, draft Kelvin Banks and he's going to be your day one tackle, or we are just, we hit training camp and there's just, an injury bug, people are getting hurt left and right, or they do what the Jets do or did in recent years where they're just, they take a player at a position and then they start practicing him at other positions, going from the left side to the right side, tackle to guard to tackle. I mean, the Jets do, I'm not even going to dive into it, but basically that's the point. I think the need is there for Seattle. And I think Banks just kind of comes in and checks that need. And in my opinion, his floor is high enough to be that day one, just plug and play guy.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll argue both for your pick as well as against it. If you want to look at the track record of what Mike McDonald has brought on in terms of offensive line, it does seem to be more the Christian Haynes athletic type. So I wonder if he does value that athleticism more. But on the contrary, they haven't worked. So he could also try to learn from his mistakes and end up being like, well, if I'm going to go for someone to be on the interior, I just want someone to have a super high floor, which I would say Banks, Booker, those are kind of the dudes where I would probably lean in that scenario. So it's interesting to say the least. So, I mean, you can't go wrong. That's the glory of the pick, is that you're getting a good offensive lineman regardless.
Yeah, I think something else too to make a note of. I feel like the guard position, their contracts are slowly but surely going up every single off. I mean, you can argue that with QB, corner, wide receiver, the bulk of the positions. But I feel like guard is one of those sneaky positions where you can't just look at the top guy and be like, oh yeah, we're gonna snag him, this guy, this guy, and this guy, because that guard is going to ask for a pretty big contract and chances. I mean, look at what Robert Hunt got.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say the 5/125 is
it's a huge deal. And Laken Tomlinson got just a ginormous overpay from the Jets. These guards are getting paid a lot. Yeah. And granted, first round pick it's valuable as hell. I know not everyone's on board with selecting a guard in the first round, but if you have that need and you're eliminating, potentially spending 12 plus 13, 14 plus $1 million a season on a guard, you can allocate that money elsewhere. I think it's a win.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. And I mean, people like to use that argument for why you don't go tight end high. But I think earlier with Tyler Warren, you labeled it perfectly. Just because the prices aren't very high, how often are you going to be able to get a tight end? Because I think Tyler Warren will come into the NFL and be a top 5 tight end. Arguably, he'll be a top 5 tight end.
Okay.
So how often are you going to be able to afford that? Who cares if there's $17 million a year? And so I'm getting a savings of this compared to what we do with a wide receiver. You're never going to be able to buy him. You're buying access to a top 5 tight end, essentially. And that's something that, why Brock Bowers, why did he fall? In retrospect, we all know shouldn't have done that. So I certainly think that, the tight ends, especially with Warren being someone who I think could be a top 5 tight end coming to the NFL, you are buying access to it. Even if the cap savings is lower, you're getting yourself something that you can't buy in general unless they're old or something like that. Because, I mean, what team is going to let a top 5 tight end walk for $17 million a year? It doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, that's I'm arguing in favor of you in that spot. But quick, short, and easy for the Buccaneers. I'm a big fan of this idea. Going Mike Green at this point. They need to replace Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Speed to power. He's pretty much a better variant of him.
I like it, man. Yeah, Todd Bowles. When you have that dominant edge rusher in the Todd Bowles defense, it's crazy. I mean, you have the blitzes every which way. Denver here, again, maybe like along the same lines as Jeanty in Dallas. It's a little cliche, but I think Loveland makes a lot of sense for Denver. Again, kind of vanilla here, but he's on the board. I think they really, really need a tight end.
Sure.
I would say tight end is a bigger need over receiver, in my opinion.
I agree. Did you see on Kay Adams' show Sean Payton's interview? Because it was actually really awesome. So highly recommend it for everybody who's watching, but including you, Ian. And it's like,
wait, what show was it on? Let me write it down.
It was on Kay Adams. I'll send it to you after. But
cool.
I ended up posting as well, saying like this is a great watch in case like it just pops up. But regardless, he was talking about must, wants, or must, needs, and wants. And he was categorizing receiver as a need, not a must. So when it comes to first round and you see value at a position that is a must, and he said closer to the inside of the field, and he said we want a joker. That's his phrase, a joker, a tight end that can be an elite route runner as well as someone who could be inline. If you have faith that Colson Loveland could do the inline stuff, that fits right up his alley. But he also talked about running back as somebody who could be a joker. So for me, I think Amari Hampton as well is a valid option. I'm a sucker for Amari Hampton, though. That's me.
Yeah, like when I think of Hampton, I think of like one of those like top 3 to top 5 picks in day 2.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly
right here. That's just kind of my initial, take when I watched him.
Yeah, and I mean for teams that are picking here at 20, that's where they're like, do we trade back or do we reach? Because if they're going to go top 3 in the from pick 30 was at 33 to 35, you're not going to get them at your next spot. So that's why we see reaches from time to time. It's like, well, shoot, we like this player more. We'd rather not lose him rather than get after the better player. But Colson Loveland, good fit regardless. I mean, it is kind of the Greg Dulcich, but not a failure kind of guy. So I respect that. Steelers, my team. I hate picking for my team if I'm going to be completely honest, because there's a couple guys I want to go. I could like light the candle and just say like, let's go batshit with Amari and Hampton in Arthur Smith's offense. I'm a big Amari stan. That's like coming from my end. Wouldn't mind that, but I think we need a boundary receiver. Not many of them that are legitimately reliable in this class, and I think Matt Golden has really earned himself his kudos. What?
I was thinking about him with the Chargers here at 22.
You did it to me with Warren. I'm going to do it to you. I mean, I ended up making this comment before. It's like, oh, well, we don't draft receivers in the first, and we always do a good job. 95% of those guys have always been personality issues. So I'm like, are we good at spotting talent, or are we just willing to take the risk on the personality? Like, there is a chance because you do interviews. So it's like, well, the last time we did it was 2006, and it was Santonio Holmes. Not saying that's what we're getting here, but I gotta say it worked the last time. It could work this time too.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of smoke that Arthur Smith was going to lead, or so there was a lot of beat reporters suggesting that Arthur Smith was a name to watch for the Jets head coaching job. Mm-hmm. And, just kind of naturally reading that stuff, you're thinking, okay, he's probably going to get some interviews elsewhere, have the head coaching experience, but it was pretty much, I want to say it was dead silent. So, he goes back to Pittsburgh and there's like rumblings that the offense is like that, that there was disagreements between him and Ross, don't make checks at the line of scrimmage. But I think, to me, Golden makes a lot of sense on the outside because he takes pressure off of Pickens.
Right. And I mean, you add on top of that we still have Roman Wilson and Calvin Austin. I mean, if you go after Burden and Ibuka, for Burden, some people think he could be a true boundary. I'm a little bit worried at the fact that I think he'll measure out 5'10". Like, it's just not easy to be able to work on the boundary in the NFL at 5'10". And I don't think Burden had the year that would, I mean, again, there's a lot of other factors. It's not his fault, but like, he didn't give me the confidence that you're a first round boundary receiver I want you to have that vision for him to be a slot that could also be a boundary, which again, you're pretty much giving the middle finger to two of the weapons that we do have. And with Ibuka, I'm not going to disagree with Brian Hartline. I'm not going to tell him, it's like, hey, you don't know what to do with Emeka Ibuka. I'm going to kick him to the boundary. So I would rather go with someone who I know is a boundary, who had success both at Houston and in Texas. So I know he's he's school versatile, which is scheme versatile. And that means he's a quick learner, and I'm excited for it.
So, yeah, it makes sense, dude. I think Pittsburgh overall just needs some more juice on the offensive side as well.
Yeah.
So last year, the Chargers passed on Ohio State receiver Marvin Harrison. It's weird, right? Harbaugh, Michigan guy picking Ohio State, but I think Ibuka makes a lot of sense for the Chargers. You're giving, like, I felt like just last season, it's just Lad McConkey. And granted, I'm not watching every single snap of Chargers football, but that's just kind of, Disley a little bit, kind of tailed off. But Loveland, I think, would have maybe made some sense here as well. But to me, just it'd be nice to get Justin Herbert like an actual dynamic receiver.
I mean, if you believe that, if you believe in the vision that McConkey can move to the boundary and be as successful, I'm so fine with that. I loved Ladd, though. I didn't think he was slot specific. So I'm perfect with that.
He impressed me this season. I didn't think he was going to have that big of an impact this early.
I mean, I love Ladd, and I still didn't think that. I remember this. I forgot what draft class he was in because this was still before. I think it was a 2023 class. I ended up seeing him like true freshman year or something like that. And I was like, Ladd McConkey will be a top 5 pick in the 2025 NFL draft. And it's like, I wish I could find that tweet, but still, like, I'm like, damn, I didn't realize it was for that class. And, obviously he shouldn't have been a top 5 pick, but it's good to know that at least his talent has just been there the whole time. And I'm so happy that it ended up working out for him. But for the Packers, my vision for him round 2 is edge with Donovan Zarawaku. I don't know. One of the edges is going to be there. I think his talent level is going to be like with the 6'2" in frame, not probably going to be the most elite athlete, could end up slipping there. The
Halfley guy.
Huh?
Halfley guy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, from BC. Because it's like, I'm looking at it, and corner is a position they need. It is the position they need. You're losing out on Jair Alexander too, because he's saying he's not going to be back with the team. So it's like,
really? I haven't seen any rumors like that.
Yeah, no, it came out like a couple weeks ago. So it's like, well, you guys are really, really praying for Ben Morrison to fall. Like, that's where my head's at. Wide receiver, you could go that route. Christian Watson's going to be gone for a good portion of next year, but I just don't see the value. And Luther Burden's not the dude who would replace the Christian Watson role. Walter Nolan's a dark horse pick here, but they did fire their defensive line coach, which means I think they have a lot more faith in their defensive line than maybe what we would expect based on their production. So, like, to me, it's like Walter Nolan, and then you look at someone who would fit Jeff Hafley's system as an athletic press man corner, and you got Siobhan Ravel and Azarie Thomas. Like, those are the guys who I'm looking at in the corner room right there. With Siobhan is 34, Azarie 84 on Trevor Sikkema's board, which this is Trevor Sikkema's board. If you didn't know, that's what the PFF board is based on. It's Trev's, but like, I don't think the Packers are going to love a player with an injury background. And Siobhan is coming off a full ACL tear. We've only seen him legitimately have one translatable game versus NFL talent off the top of my head, and that was like week 1 of 2023. That's a little bit scary when you're talking about a first-round pick. That's why I'm a little bit lower on Revel than most people. So, I mean, the dark horse here is Darian Porter. He's 24 years old, so he's a little bit older. But the dude has under 700 snaps at corner and ended up being arguably the best corner in the entire country with 70 yards in one-on-one coverage over the entire year. And he has the best ball skills. He is 6'2". He's about 6'3", actually. And he's rumored to run 4.2. So, also in Iowa State. So it's like, he's used to the climate. He's smooth, former wide receiver, great special teamer. What are you thinking at this pick?
I think Revel makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But, it feels really Green Bay Packer to go with the Walter Nolan. Like, just go with the high upside defensive lineman.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of like the Rashawn Gary route. But I mean, you could always push back and say, Green Bay's also selected pretty. They've selected corners pretty high in the draft. As well before. So I don't know. I mean, Green Bay, to me, they're in a really good spot. I feel like this is the sweet spot for the draft. Like if you're picking, 15 through 45, like you're gonna land a really, really good player, like value wise, in my opinion. Like just a solid piece that you could just kind of plug and play.
Let's go with Nolan.
Nolan? Okay.
Yeah. Cool. TJ Slayton's up for a contract, not the same body type, but I mean, you're looking at getting more production out of your defensive line. You can end up like supercharging it with him.
What's your thoughts on Amos from Ole Miss?
I love him.
You do like him?
I love him. Yeah. He is number 35 on my board.
Because I think for Brian Flores, right? Like Murphy's a free agent. I mean, actually, who might still? I think he's still on the board. Not sure where he is on this PFF.
I'm realizing that I had a typo on my board. I was like, my OCD was going nuts. I was like, that's why I went like silent on you. But
no, you're totally good. Let's see. I think I'm going to go corner here. It's really, for me at least, it's going to be between Revel, like a super physical corner, or Amos.
I mean, don't shame Amos on the physicality on me. Like that guy he's a unit, man. He is also really good at the catch point too.
I feel like offensively, man, they just check. So like you just go down the list and they just have so much talent there. I really feel like with the pending free agents for Minnesota, and granted, we don't know, what direction that they're, going to be doing in free agency. I think I'm going to go with your boy Amos here.
I respect it. Technically, I normally go Revel because I think it's more realistic he goes above Amos, and also he looks good in purple. Sometimes like that's how I justify it to myself. I'm like, all right, he looks good in purple. It's going to work out with Flores. But
one thing I do want to make a note of, I think because this cornerback class, again, Johnson, Morrison, Amos, like all these guys.
Yeah.
I think people will start just naturally, like for better or for worse, will really dissect the combine numbers for them, really just getting into like the fine details to really like to the point where you're splitting hairs. Just because I feel like there's a lot of these kind of guys that are like mid to like early round 2 types of players that, I would project to come in and start immediately. And there's a lot of teams that need corners too. So I don't know. I think I definitely feel like Minnesota should be all over adding a secondary piece.
Oh, 100%. You have 3 dudes up for contract, and then you're probably bringing back 1 in Byron Murphy. Like that, if you don't bring back Byron Murphy, I would say that the corner you should go after is Jahdae Barron, because I think that might be my comp for him. But outside of that, you need a boundary corner. Like, unfortunately, Kyrie Jackson, we know what happened, like rest in peace. But, they did see a need and it hasn't been filled yet. And then you add on to that 2 more dudes who are out the building. It is a massive need that they need to fill at proper value. So I think Amos is perfectly fine. Texans, I'm between 2 dudes here. And I know where I'm going to go, but there's a really good argument for both. Burden, because the receiving core has been decimated. You're not going to have Diggs. I mean, you talk about Nico, his health has been unreliable. And then the poor Tank Dell, I mean, back-to-back horrible injuries. Like, you need some help there. But it's the same thing as the Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase meme. I mean, it's just that offensive line is garbage on the inside. And Gray Zabel, I've heard from inside sources that there are teams sitting at the top, because I can't say which team because I would spoil the source. They wanted him at like within the top 35 picks, and they don't think he's escaping the first. Like, he had that good of a Senior Bowl as well. He ended up being my number 12 player in the class. I'm going to go after Gray Zabel because he just was phenomenal. Like, phenomenal.
And he could play multiple positions on the O-line too.
He tested out he did like one-on-one reps at center and guard, and he played pretty damn well at left tackle too. So I was like, all right, I'll I'll count you as a W, man.
So the Rams are interesting because a part of me wants to go, explosive playmaker. It's looking like they're going to be losing Cooper Kupp here.
Yeah.
But, I'm also thinking, okay, this team, like, in my opinion, they draft really, really well.
They do.
You're looking at, and it's not just like Verse and Fisk, from last season. It's kind of funny. Me and my brother were actually joking around about it the other day. Just like now Sean McVay and the Rams, Les Snead, they finally have first round picks. Mm-hmm. It's kind of cool to like see, what their strategy is. Cause, for so long we've just been seeing them only, show up to the draft table with
day 2
round picks. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're going to try to bring back Alaric Jackson. I like to go Connerly as well. But it's like it depends. How much do you take stock in that Mike Green rep? Because he ended up going up against Mike Green that next rep, and he did not have the same result remotely.
He, in my opinion, who knows, maybe Mike Green is just that freaking good, and we'll be looking back on this just kind of laughing. But if I'm not mistaken, Josh was lined up at right tackle, and in my opinion, he's a left tackle.
Correct.
Next level.
Right. I was saying so this is insight from people who I know who love the Rams. So I'm not going to say this is a direct quote from me, but their vision is to re-sign Alaric Jackson. That's their number one priority because they feel pretty comfortable with him. It's actually the right tackle spot that they feel is more so replaceable for the long run. So it's an interesting thought right there.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say how much stock do you take in that rep from Connerly? Because do you think that if he sits behind, why am I forgetting the dude's name, Havenstein, for a year or ends up even starting in there, does he have time to get comfortable with using his right tackle mechanics? If he does, you're talking about a top 10 to 15 type of dude, maybe top 20 in some people's boards, maybe top 25, but you're getting him pretty solid value and you have a contingency plan right away. And if injury, you can end up having him as a swing tackle. I would say I would not instantly dip on the pick because I don't take too much stock in the Connerly versus Mike Green rep.
Yeah, neither do I. Yeah. But I didn't know that the Rams were maybe that high on Jackson.
I wouldn't put a ton of stock in it. I'm repeating what somebody told me, and it's not a super inside source. So take it with a massive grain of salt.
Well, either way, I really like Membu too. So I think if that's true, we'll go off your source. If that's true, I think Membu can just slide right into right tackle, and then they can bring back Jackson on the left side.
Yeah. Again, Jackson should be pretty cheap to retain as well, comparatively to the top end left tackles. So maybe that's another reason why they want to continue recomping their cap situation. So if you're comfortable, similar to Braxton Jones on the Bears, it's he's not a top 3 tackle.
Right.
There's a chance to replace him if you need to, but sometimes it's nice having just somebody that is good enough, and you build the offense around that, and you save some cash.
Yeah, those tackles, as long as they're not getting beat consistently with one glaring weakness, but I guess if you have that guy that's kind of ranked 15 through 20, in that range, it's not the worst place to be. Because some teams just get absolutely shredded on the outside, and they're obvious, like New England kind of last season. But either way, the Rams, they're going to walk away with a great player. They could go with the explosive offensive play, offensive ball carrier. But I don't know. For me, I just feel solidifying the offensive line. I know this is really kind of cut and dry here, but I don't want to see Matt Stafford go down. I don't want to see Matt Stafford getting rushed. I'm not really impressed with their tackle. Again, Jackson is kind of that mid-tier guy, but if I have the opportunity to upgrade at either spot, I'm going to put value in that, and then just assume that McVay can find someone in round 2 as an explosive, receiver, or one of those just ball carrier types of players where just get him the football and watch him make plays.
You look at their track record, Nakua, even Whittington as of recent, Cooper Kupp. Were any of those first round picks? Yeah. Tutu Atwell, were any of them first? No. Granted, they didn't have them, but at the same time, it's okay, well, probably going to, and then you end up looking at what they did last year in terms of free agency on the offensive line. They paid a lot of money on the interior. So they're going to value their tackle spots too. I think it gives you more reasoning to also value that offensive tackle spot. I will ask, are we going to agree that pick 28 could be like the traded for Myles Garrett?
Yeah. Let's just assume that's Cleveland. Good idea.
Yeah, because I don't think you have. Yeah, you don't have trades as an option. So for those watching, 28 is the Cleveland Browns, and I love being a jerk. And I know if I were the Cleveland Browns at 28, I would want a left tackle and Josh Connerly. So if I'm the Baltimore Ravens, I'm going to be a jerk and disarm my own in-division rival of a true left tackle while also potentially getting someone who could either play guard if you bring back Stanley or be a successor / someone to replace him at left tackle. It's a win-win in my opinion. I'm going to go Josh Connerly.
Do you think they bring back Stanley?
I thought they'll do it, but
because I figured that was just like a shoe-in.
Did they bring him back?
Mm-hmm.
I think so too. But I still think that Stanley has had a checkered injury history in the past, but also their guard spot needs help. Mercari's gone. And Connerly is that person in case of injury. And in case that they don't want to, like, you could trade Stanley if you really needed to. If let's just say Connerly is like the next big thing, you could flip the contract and be able to be like to net positive out of it for that way. But I think Josh Connerly, again, if we're assuming this is going to be that Browns pick, I'd be willing to say I'm going to spend a 27th overall pick on a guard that technically could be a tackle and not have a team in my division have someone who I really trust to be a legitimate left tackle.
For sure. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So with Cleveland here,
not Detroit. Cleveland.
Yeah, not Detroit.
Not Detroit.
So there's a rumor, or I don't know how true this is, but like maybe you've heard it. Do you think Denzel Ward wants out too? If they move Garrett, do you think Denzel's going to be like, I want out too?
I think he is going to get pissy, but I don't know if it's going to be to that degree. He's made it clear that he would be interested, but it's a little different than Myles Garrett posting on his social media saying, I want out. So maybe that would be something that would happen post-draft. Like maybe Denzel sees how the draft board falls and everything and like sees if like, hey, these coaches, the new, like obviously the new OC, like, do I believe in the direction of this team? And if he doesn't, might be something that happens during the season. I just don't think they're going to double trade and like talk about Stefanski keeping his job for Christ's sake. So like, do you think he's going to want to trade him? Or like, I think Stefanski could be fired before midseason if they're having that bad. And then Denzel's like, peace. And that's when it would probably happen.
Yeah, I mean, like, I like Emerson. I like Newsome.
Right.
I like Ward.
Right.
I have a hard time seeing, like, especially like in that division, Baltimore, Cincy, Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
If they move off of Myles Garrett, I just can't. I just don't see that sitting well with players like Denzel Ward who are in a similar time frame.
Sure.
And I don't know. I just feel like maybe Cleveland with this extra bonus pick here. I mean, you kind of not going to sit here and compare Abdul Carter to Myles Garrett.
Right.
I do think there is a significant drop off, but
Sure.
Still his replacement. I just don't necessarily want to be left hanging where I make that pre-draft move with Garrett, and then all of a sudden it irks the locker room. Stefanski's like it's just kind of sets a negative tone in such an exciting time, right?
Sure.
I think Revel makes a lot of sense for Cleveland.
Okay. I mean, if your goal, so to add more to that, if you are assuming Ward will be gone, Newsome's also, I believe, on a last year of his contract after this year. So
after 25.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
He's also going to be pretty much gone after a year. Do you think he's going to want to re-sign if the organization is like that negative to him? I don't think so. So yeah. Revel's it's admitting defeat and admitting you're going to lose your top two dudes within a year, technically like three of your top guys within a year. But I mean, sometimes you just got to admit that there's some risk that comes with it. So
yeah,
perspective.
Now that I'm thinking about it, though, it's just like, why would I mean, I guess this would have to be one of those situations where Andrew Berry has like confirmation that he's going to stay for the long term, because if he's on the hot seat along with Stefanski, then it's like, okay, you know what? Maybe drafting a corner for the future doesn't make much sense.
On the contrary, if I may, I think that if you are potentially losing two of your top corners, like maybe Newsome just like puts out a trade request since he's in his final year as well, looking for a new contract. Denzel Ward puts it in, and maybe they don't even play. You're really screwed if you don't have a contingency plan there. So you're like kind of getting a player that people view as a top 15 talent when healthy at 28. And then you're also mitigating the risk of losing your job completely if those two guys, like their job is dependent as whether Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome plays. So I think that too could end up being, actually a smarter move. But I was going to potentially, that's actually a good move. I was going to potentially suggest going after Amari and Hampton based on the running philosophy. But
the Browns?
Yeah. I mean, I know new OC from Bama, but not from Bama, like from Bama beforehand, but still, I mean, I still think this team had its most success on the ground, and Nick Chubb ain't getting any younger, but that's something you could also address with multiple other picks. So I get it.
No, dude, that's actually really, I haven't thought about that at all, really. But then again, I'm not as big of a fan, with him.
Right.
Like, so if you put your maybe, I don't want to say bias, but just kind of put your fandom aside with him.
Yeah.
Do you think he's going to be a round one guy? Like, I know you'd like to see him go in round one, and you think he's going to be a baller, but
right. No, it's a good question, right? Like
right. Sorry to cut you off. I
No,
just want to say one last thing. Not comparing the two players,
sure,
but I feel like he's similar to Dalvin Cook, where people know his name, people talk about him, but he's gonna be one of those top picks, like in day two, like one of those must-have guys. That's kind of how I'm viewing him.
To be fair, Dalvin Cook, I think, had a fumbling problem at Florida State, did he not? I think that's why he slipped. Versus, Hampton doesn't have that question anymore. He did. The dude, I think, had 6 fumbles 2 years ago, but he's been like 6 to 3 to 1. So I don't know if that would be like, I think Cook would have been a first round pick if he didn't have those concerns. And I think in retrospect, when you look at what he was able to do in his prime, probably should have been. But as the season progressed, I thought that, so I was a big Amari and Hampton hater too, coming into the year. He's like my RB16. Like, I genuinely did not believe in the guy. And I thought everything this year clicked. He had no reason to have a repeat year in terms of statistics. Like, you lose your top quarterback, you literally go and downgrade significantly there. Your top lineman is 5'10". Like, it was like, I think that he made an incredible amount of strides this year. No pun intended, because he literally did. But like, I think that he's a really, really solid back. And I think, even fandom aside, a value like that, especially if Cleveland has one of these like later first picks, I think he does go. I think the odds are like 60-40 that he goes in the first round. So interesting, man. Because I mean, I know that you're like one of those guys who, again, views him as like that early second, but you look at a team, you could talk about the Chargers, but the Chargers are good at scrapping. But, what we were talking about earlier with the Broncos, they're talking about a joker role. They could do it via trade back if they wanted to, but assuming that maybe it's like a mind in the middle, do they trust the value at, what is that, 52? Do they trust that you're going to be able to get a talent that fits the massive role that I think Sean Payton wants? And I don't know if you could believe in that, but I do think that there might be tight ends that could fill the role of Colston Loveland for the value that, like, he has a lot of faith in the receiving core. Maybe he sees it more as like an area of growth in the running back room rather than in the tight end room. So that's where my head's at. And then you add on the Steelers because we're losing both of our top backs. Najee's flipping the double birds on Instagram. Like, shit's going down. And then, you then look at Cleveland as well. Even Washington, if they're like really looking for a longer term, like RB1, there's just chances for him to go at multiple spots to where I would lean more in favor than against. Interesting, man. So to real quick before we get to Washington, just curious on your take. Right now, who would be your tight end 3?
And also, how do you feel about Arroyo from Miami?
So Loveland's my tight end 3. That's
Okay.
yeah, I would say Fannin is my tight end 2.
Okay, cool.
I'm a sucker for Fannin, but like those are my top 3. Let me pull up my list like super duper quick because it's right here. But essentially, by the way, my pick right here for the Commanders is going to be Luther Burden. Long story short.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Olamide Zaccheaus should not be getting reps. It's like you get as much help as possible, man. Give Jaden the opportunity to be able to like make some quick throws, man. Pulling up my list right here. And of course I had to do it in reverse order. Like I'm a big Jake Brenningstool guy. So Brenningstool, Taylor, Arroyo are all in the same group.
Cool.
So, but gotcha. Arroyo apparently has injury concerns. Not sure.
Yeah, he
I know
really
he had
burst out onto the scene this past season with Miami.
Right.
But he's getting a lot of hype. I was pretty impressed with the whole Senior Bowl performance, but I don't know. I feel like when we get, well, maybe outside of you, but 2 other guys, once you get out of the Warren Loveland talk, it's like who's the tight end 3? You kind of get a lot of like a mixed bag of different reactions.
Right.
That's
where right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying like there is that group of dudes, Fannin, Arroyo, Taylor, and then Brenningstool's the one that is like out of that group for most people, but he's in it for me. But Arroyo was tight end 6 before the Senior Bowl. Like big asterisk there. So he could probably be tight end 4 right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So for the Bills here at 30, man, I really think this is a great draft for them as well. Like I would assume that they're going to move on from Von Miller. In this scenario, they don't trade for Myles Garrett, although I think Garrett could make sense for Buffalo.
I agree.
And you got Stewart sitting here. You have Sawyer sitting here. You got JTT sitting here.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to go edge, you can do that. Rasul Douglas is a free agent. I think he's going to get brought back, but if he doesn't,
I agree.
You can go. You can go after corner Barron. Safety is also another one of these big needs, but I also feel like again, dude, like you can maybe target a safety in those middle rounds and go out and get a starter or in free agency. And the rumor right now is that the safeties are going to get a lot of money. Like the contracts will be there for the safeties, and that might scare away a team in like in the Buffalo Bills, which isn't really in the best financial situation.
Right.
But it definitely feels like the Bills just continue to invest in the D line.
Yeah.
And Oliver, or just all these different guys, right? I was actually a huge fan of Greg Rousseau coming out, just such like an athletic freak. Loved him back at Miami. I think I'm gonna go, man. I think I'm gonna go with JTT from Ohio State. I think he makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
On this list.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I love JTT. He is he's my next best available edge rusher. Outside, I'm a sucker for Braden Swinson, but I'm not going to allow my fandom to send him to a spot where I don't think he should go.
With Swinson, was that the whole Shrine Bowl thing, or was that someone else? Did he not go, or
just didn't show up? Like he wasn't even on the roster though. Like I don't know what happened, and there's nothing.
But he was supposed to go, right?
Supposed to. Yeah.
And there was no follow up.
There's nothing online.
Because I remember seeing his name, and I was excited to see what he would do there.
Right.
And then I didn't really look too much into it after, and then I was pumped because I was watching, just kind of keeping track of all the Shrine Bowl stuff when it was happening.
Yeah.
And then it kind of hit me after that second day. I'm like, wait a second, he's not even here.
Yeah, it really was kind of mind-boggling to me. It was also irritating as me going to the Shrine Bowl, like excited to see like my guy, not being able to do that. So like, I'm really hoping there's some resolution that comes out. Maybe his toe got stubbed and he's like, I'm not going to risk it. Like, I don't know, but it is certainly interesting because I'm sure since you saw my board, you know how high I am on him. Like
top
he's my darling.
5 for you, right?
He like slipped to 6 because I dropped his ass. I was like, like you don't get to skip out in the Shrine Bowl and get away with it. So yeah, I ended up dropping him like to 6, but still, like I'm a super fan, like batshit kind of super fan. So yeah, it was depressing to say the least. But for Philly, A lot of good options here, honestly. And, my vision for the team is in round 2, go Darius Alexander, pair him back up with Quinion Mitchell from Toledo. I love Darius Alexander. I don't know. Have you watched Darius yet?
I have not.
Dude's a freak. Dude's an absolute monster. So that would potentially dissuade me from Shamar Stewart, but it also might not because, he is just like a physical phenom. But there's a player who I love that I know if utilized the way that I envision him to be utilized in a Fangio system, which is a big if because he's an actual linebacker, then he's worth this pick 1,000 times over. And that's Jahad Campbell. I think Jahad Campbell, he was the number 1 edge rusher from his high school class. So he has a lineage in edge rushing. He went to Alabama. There's too many edge rushers there. So he transitioned to linebacker because he's a freak. And so I think he has an AVG-esque sense to him. And he has the best bend, arguably, in the class. And my favorite thing about him, and I don't know if you've watched his edge reps. First off, they're insane. But second off, he has the best snap timing I've ever seen of a prospect that is an out of position type of dude. It is insane. The ball is snapped as he is taking a step. It is phenomenal.
I feel like a really good fit for Campbell would be the Bucs. It might be a little high, but I think the Bucs make a lot of sense for his skill set.
100%. If Jalen Walker,
you're with me? Cool.
Yeah, 100%. If Mike Green weren't there or Jalen Walker isn't there, you bet your ass I'm sending Jahad Campbell there every time.
I like the pick, man. Dude, Philly just continues to get just hard-nosed player after hard-nosed player after hard-nosed player. I love how Philly. By the way, quick side note: who do you got in the Super Bowl? This is being filmed. I don't know when this is going to get posted, but
yeah, that's a good question. Dude, Spags in the Super Bowl is kind of special. I gotta say, I think Saquon Barkley will make the difference. It's going to irritate the hell out of me because I'm not a big Jalen Hurts guy, but I will be wearing Juju Smith-Schuster's USC jersey tomorrow, and maybe I'll have a Brett Coleman curse. So I'm going to go with the Brett Coleman curse and go after Philly on that.
Yeah, I'm going to go Eagles. I'm hoping that Fangio makes the difference.
Dude, Vic versus Spags. Talk about meeting of the minds. Unbelievable. I love it.
Dude, so for KC, man, I want to go with the tackle just because they just can't. It just feels.
So let me chime in here. That's where I think Ronnie Stanley could possibly not be going back to the Ravens. I think he might get the bag from KC. Because
I wonder how much cap space the Chiefs have.
You can always make cap space for them. I think especially for an offensive tackle, they will make the room. That's why. So this is my thought process, similar to what I was talking about with the Bengals with edge rusher. And for that mark, technically the Steelers with boundary corner. Of course, shot ourselves in the foot with Artie Burns, but I usually am not a huge fan, and technically the Saints as well with edge rusher, taking positions that you do not develop well. So far, the past 2 tackles they've taken, not great. Just going to be honest. Wasn't a fan of Sua Matea. He's buns. I don't want to stick another tackle. I personally, which I think it's realistic for you to take a tackle here. Full transparency. I think it's a smart move. But I think they need to be self-aware and say, we need to go to a proven product. Jawan Taylor is, all intents and purposes, their best offensive tackle. Technically Joe Thuney too, but they acquired both of those in free agency. Your most success has not come from you drafting it. It's come from you acquiring it. And so it's, I'd be terrified, but I think it is also logical to look at that tackle position.
But I do think, I will say, excuse me, that you can't maybe get dissuade or have your confidence get rattled if you continue to miss at a specific, almost like Baltimore with receivers.
Sure.
I'm not gonna, if I was a Ravens fan, I wouldn't be crossing out receivers' names because it's we haven't really had that much success here. You know what I mean? That would be my only pushback, but I do get what you're, I
took edge rusher for the Bengals. So if we're going to be real, there's 2 sides to it. But I mean, you know this better than I do. Tyron Smith, he's up for a contract, and he could be like one of those guys if you want to fill the gap, if you want to take a tackle here, like Donovan Jackson. Could make sense.
Actually, dude, you know what? I'm surprised that he's fallen this far. And you were talking about Spags, and one of the big things with Spags is development of defensive players, and Stewart's ceiling is just freaking. Here, I'm getting a call. Stewart's ceiling is out of control. So you know what? Like if you're KC, just unfortunately being realistic, like when are we going to have a top 10 pick? Like when are we going to have the opportunity to draft like someone with just like that physical skill set, even though he wasn't all that productive? I'm not, a fan of the Chiefs really at all, but admittedly, I think this would be an intriguing pick, even though it doesn't really check the box of like, okay, we need this player or we need this position.
They can always upgrade at edge too. I totally think that it's on the board for him. And then you also add the fact that he can kick to the inside on certain downs. It's almost the inverse of Chris Jones, who kind of kicks out on certain downs as well. And talk about mentorship, Karlaftis as well as Jones being there, like could really work out for their benefit.
Dude, yeah, that's a really, really good call. But bro, I appreciate it, man. I figured we'd only be live for like 40 or be recording for like 45 minutes to an hour. So I appreciate it, going over the time here, man. Thank you.
I got you. I mean, it's always fun. I knew damn well as soon as it was like pulled up and I'm like, we're doing a full first. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be like Brocho and I ended up going like 2 hours on ours, but it's like, don't feel bad. We got to have some good discussions in there, good football discourse. And that to me is worth far more than getting through a video quickly.
Gotcha. Hey man, I'm just not trying to waste your entire night.
Dude, it ain't a waste. We have some good time here. We got to have some good conversations. I think that's all that matters. It was a fun mock. Yeah,
it was cool, man. It was definitely down to do another one. Maybe, I don't know, at some point in the future, maybe like next month or something, like maybe a post free agency if you're down.
I'm always down. I'm always down to talk ball.
Awesome, man. Well, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you. Hour and a half here is crazy. You guys are real ones. And be sure to check out Alex's channel, man. He does a ton of great stuff. I want to see you pump out a mock draft. I want to say every day, right?
I post 2 a week. So I end up either reviewing like the bigger ones like ESPN, CBS, or like do a positional ranking, or like I post every day. But I do a 2-rounder in one video, and then I do 3 rounds with trades that I split up into 2 for obvious reasons why we're at an hour and a half, because we like to yap. Like we're professional yappers. So I keep it real though.
Yeah, no, I love your channel, man.
Thank you.
But yeah, anyway, if you watch to the end, be sure to check out Alex's channel. You won't regret it. Hail Mary Sports. Link is down below in the description box. Thanks so much for everyone watching. I appreciate it. And as always, go Jets.